Springfield. Here we go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? How are you? We're Dominate the Diamond. We're here at Zone Sports Academy. Duke Baxter, Steve Nikorak, and Mikey Nikorak. We have a special guest for you. As you know, we're going to talk a lot about pitching. We're going to talk about ways to add pitching into your practice plans. We're going to talk about when to start throwing off-speed pitches. We got all kinds of great stuff. And Mikey's got some really good things for you. He's going to show you and talk to you about some stuff. So please make sure in the comments you leave. We love to look and see where you're watching from, what level coach you are, and also the experience you have. Are you a first-time coach? Are you a seasoned veteran? Are you teaching high school? Are you coaching T-ball? What are you coaching? We're really excited. Coach Steve, are you excited or what?
No, I'm pumped. We get a lot of questions weekly about pitching and arm care and throwing routines and what to do in practice for your pitchers. And Duke and I are not the experts on pitching. Mikey is. He was a pitcher all through high school. He was a first-round draft pick in 2015 by the Colorado Rockies, and now he runs our pitching department here at Zone. So it's just a huge piece to the puzzle here, as well as he created our Dominate the Diamond pitching program. And we're in the works right now of creating more pitching programs, getting more content out to you guys. So it's a great piece of the puzzle here to add on to our show today.
Hey, Dom, do we have a cool video of Coach Mike?
No.
I know you got something. I know you put together some kind of really cool thing for us. I know you did. I saw it yesterday. So first, let's kick it off. Let's kick it off with this. So, Coach Mikey, a lot of questions have been coming to us asking. Teams only have between an hour to an hour and a half practice a week, and as you know, a lot of kids have to pitch. Some of them aren't even pitchers, but they have to be able to go in the game and throw some strikes. But the problem is they only have one or two practices. So with that small amount of time, how do we build pitching routines and getting a chance to watch the kids throw in such a small period of time?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I know that we struggle with that sometimes because a lot of the players that come in are pitchers, but they're also position players. So when they get to practice, they want to make sure that they're getting their swings in. They want to make sure that they're getting their reps in the field in. First thing I'll say is when you guys do your throwing program down the right field line or left field line, make sure that when you come in, we start mixing our pitches in. So four seams, two seams, change ups, just so that those players can start to get a feel for those pitches instead of just going four seam all day long. And then once we get into depending on the age group, once we get into about 50 feet or so, have their throwing partners actually squat down and throw a 75% effort flat ground. That way, all of those pitchers are getting their flat ground in right away. You don't have to designate certain times, certain parts of the field to call one or two of them over at a time. The coaches can hang out there and watch everybody throw all at once. And then that way, first 10 minutes, flat ground's done. Going into the practice now, there's so many different things that you can work on for pitching. I think sometimes it's a little difficult with the amount of time that you have. If you're going to throw bullpens that day, let's say, you're going to have to call over two players at a time. If you end up calling 6 or 7 pitchers over at a time, what happens is 4 of them stand there, 2 of them are warming up, and 1 of them's pitching. So it's really wasted time. The kids are hanging out there. Then that's usually when you only end up having a couple hitters because everybody wants to pitch. They're hanging down there and they're waiting their turn. So having your assistant coach hang out over by the bullpen, calling 1 or 2 at a time, and then depending on the day, maybe it's a 15-pitch bullpen, maybe it's a 20-pitch bullpen, but making sure that we're moving and we're doing what we need to do. There's no messing around because, again, like you guys said, it's tight on time. You don't have a lot of time. Once all of the bullpens are done, usually that's probably towards the end of practice. I know it is for us, especially because we have a lot of pitchers on our team. But during the actual practice, try to incorporate the pitchers in as much as you can. So let's say you're doing infield, outfield. Well, there's a ton of stuff that pitchers can work on when it comes to infield, outfield. Covering first base, making sure that they're fielding ground balls, making sure they're backing up bases. So making sure you send the pitcher out there on that mound every single play, regardless if they're getting the ball that play or not. I tell all of my younger guys, I coach 10U at Zoned, and I remember us having a practice where we were doing infield, outfield, and I was talking about getting over to first base and trying to make it almost like every single time the ball is hit to the left side, you got to run over there. If the first baseman's there, that's okay, but we need to get into a habit of running over there every single time. And you'd be surprised how many kids don't know that. And the more that you can get those guys mixed in, now those pitcher-onlys on the team, or maybe the kids that are majority a pitcher and then sometimes they play the field, they're getting their work in instead of standing around and waiting.
That's good.
We talk about it with a lot of the positions on the field, and we get questions all the time about playing multiple spots and playing multiple positions. But getting your players comfortable being all over the field, I think is just going to add into what Mikey just said there. You're getting them used to playing that spot. So, they might just be a shortstop right now, but then when they get to high school or, they get to college, they might be playing second, they might be playing third. So getting them comfortable all over the field, your position players that also pitch, getting them comfortable, like Mike just said, backing up bases, knowing what to do, when the ball's hit to a certain area. I coach 16U, and I'm still yelling at our guys for not backing up bases. So start them young. Mikey coaches the 10U team here, and he's on those guys about covering first, about getting over on a ground ball, making sure that they're backing up the correct base, and it's something that we can ingrain in their head at a young age. This way, when they move on to middle school and high school, they're a lot more prepared for it.
A question that I was wondering, which I know a lot of people are probably wondering the same exact thing, is, Mikey, when did you start pitching? Was it something that you've always done your whole career? Is it something that you started in Little League? Like, when did you pick up pitching? Because a lot of guys are worried about, kids throwing too much and how much should they throw. And so when did you start your pitching journey?
I started pitching probably in minor A. So the way it works up in Pennsylvania is it goes minor B, minor A, Little League, Babe Ruth, and then everything after. Minor B was all about coach pitch, and they kind of stuck you next to the mound so that you can work on fielding a ground ball or, pretty much just taking up space on the field. But once I got to minor A, I started to pitch a little bit, and that's where we went over the absolute basics of being a pitcher. Where to stand on the mound, how to lift your leg up. And then realistically, it really wasn't too much different of a throwing motion. It was really just throw a baseball and try to throw it over the plate. And then as I got to Little League ages 9 through 12, that's when I really started to understand exactly what the windup was, exactly what the stretch was, making sure that I come set every single pitch, making sure that I'm taking my direction towards home. So I would say right around age 9 is when it got serious. Probably around age 7 was when I actually started doing it.
Nice. So, one of the things that we want to make sure is that since we do have Mikey on the show today, any questions that you may have at any level about pitching or throwing or any aspect of throwing a baseball or softball that you'd like to have Mikey touch upon, we'll be glad to get to some of those questions. So what do you want to talk about next, Coach Steve?
Well, I think one topic that comes up a lot, and we go through it, a lot of you guys are coaching teams to where, let's say you're playing in a tournament and you're playing 5-6 games on a weekend, and you've got guys playing shortstop and they're playing center field, but then trying to figure out what they have to do to get ready to pitch. Maybe they're pitching in the 6th game of the weekend and they've thrown a lot that day. We get a lot of questions about pregame routines for, younger players, not only just what to do before the game, but when you have a 15-minute break in between games, what's a good bullpen routine to get those guys ready for the field? Mike, what would you say to those guys that don't really know and the kids just kind of go down the line and just get loose?
So I would say it's different for ages. So if we're talking real young guys, anywhere between ages 7 to age 12, I would say biggest thing is to make sure that they're paying attention to how much throwing they're making off of the field, right? So it's inevitable when you're in a tournament and you have 5 or 6 games, everybody's got to pitch and those players have to play another position. But what I've noticed is when the game's over and they're playing wiffle ball or they're playing tennis ball, baseball, and they're making throws all day long, those are the throws that end up catching up to them, because when they're playing shortstop, especially at the lower level, they're only getting a few ground balls a game. It's not like the ball is getting hit to them every single play. So just making sure that you take your team through a full stretch before the game and even after the game. When we start to talk about a little bit older guys, those guys should start developing some type of a routine before the game. So that can be anything from bands, body blades, shoulder weights, plyo care. I'm a fan of some of the plyo care stuff, but making sure that it's a routine and it's not just something that we're doing when we're going to pitch. So one of my coaches when I was with the Rockies used to call it prehabbing instead of rehabbing. So a lot of kids, they like to wait until their arm is sore to start doing something, which is the complete opposite of what you want to do. You want to take care of it every single day, before every single game, after every single game, so that you're making sure that your arm doesn't get sore. And I think educating those kids on as much as you possibly can when it comes to how do I do bands correctly? What's the purpose of doing bands? I'm not just pulling these bands because it looks cool. I'm actually doing it because I'm trying to activate certain muscles. I'm trying to make sure that I stretch out correctly, and making sure that those kids do it religiously.
I think it's a really good point, because how often do our kids have a break? You're playing an 8 a.m. game, and then you have a break at 10 o'clock, and then you're playing at 12, and every kid's throwing the football out behind the right field fence, or they're playing wall ball off the fence, and they're just chucking balls at each other. So I think it's good to make sure that you monitor those guys. And I struggle just making sure that our guys are not going crazy in between games. Try to get them, go eat, go have fun, but then maybe an hour before the game starts, let's get together, let's watch that middle game, and then go through our normal BP, our normal stretch routine, because that's the challenging part for you coaches out there. When the kids kind of scatter all over the Little League complex, you don't know where they're at. That's where they're throwing, they're making 100 throws in between games. So that's a good point that I hadn't even thought of. And Mike, your last point there I thought was good, the prehab versus rehab, because we talked about it yesterday about, if you go to the gym once a week, let's say you go to the gym on Mondays, you're going to be really sore on Tuesday, just because your body's not used to going to the gym multiple days a week. And then you mentioned, going to the gym multiple days a week, and you start to build up that endurance. And it's the same thing with throwing, making sure that, you're doing your arm care, you're doing your routine every single day to minimize the risk of injury long term.
Yeah, I think we got a first question, and I really like it a lot from Coach Jim. At 12U, how do you work with a pitcher who is afraid of getting hit with a line drive coming right back at him? Mikey, what do you think about that one?
So that's a really, really good question, and I just had a 8U team come in and work for 30 minutes the other day. And I was thinking to myself the exact same thing, right? Kids throw a baseball, and they're so worried. They see all this stuff on ESPN. They see stuff on YouTube of guys getting hit, and they're like, oh, man, I don't want that to be me. So two different things. We have the zone smush balls that we use. So what I like to do is I'll have a kid throw a bullpen where I'm standing in front of the mound but a little bit off to the side with a tennis racket and a smush ball. And after they throw the pitch, again, I'm probably 15 or 20 feet away from them, I will take a tennis racket, I'll throw up the smush ball, and I'll hit it at him, right? And a lot of times it ends up hitting him, but the more he or she does it, the more they're ready for the pitch or ready for the line drive after they throw the pitch. Once they start getting pretty good at it, I actually started using the Hiko sticks. So about 3 days ago, what we did was we had a station where they pretended to throw a ball, and then after they threw the ball, or after they pretended to throw the ball, we threw the Hiko stick at them and called the color out, just to make sure that they were there and they were ready and they were paying attention with their glove hand, making sure that they're catching blue or making sure that they're catching red. So unfortunately, it's something that you can't really avoid. If there's a line drive back at a kid, he has to be ready for it, and it's hard to tell him that it's not going to happen, because chances are it probably is going to happen, whether the ball's on the ground or the ball's in the air. But just trying to get them prepared as much as possible, starting off with something like a smush ball where if it hits him, he's going to start to get over that fear of being hit, and then kind of upgrading to the Hiko stick where you're throwing it and now it's more of a game and he wants it to come back at him because he wants to make that catch that's getting thrown at him or getting hit at him.
I think what I want to do is I say we do a small demonstration of what you said. I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna pretend like I'm throwing a pitch. I'll give you the tennis racket and the smush ball and kind of demonstrate so that the coaches out there can really get a good idea of what you're saying. So we'll just use this kind of area right here. So Mike, you'll be in the front up here, and I'll be back here so you can see me, and I'll pretend like I'm throwing. There he goes. There you go. You can see it perfect.
A little bit further.
Okay.
All right, that's good. So you're going to go through, you can go wind up or stretch, pretend to throw a pitch. Good. Oh. Good.
That's a good drill. I see how it gets you really, you're not in this position, it really makes you want to be ready, and then
I like to mix one of these in where, go ahead. I do the big backswing just to make sure that that kid's not getting there, and right as that ball gets hit, he does one of these, keeps him in there a little bit longer, then he realizes I'm in a good position or I'm in a good position to field this ball, hangs in there and he catches it.
I like that. You know, it definitely made me feel like after I threw the ball to really be ready. So yeah. I think that's a good one. I think that's a really good one for kids to know they have to field their position.
Well, I think it's being safe and teaching the kids how to field it properly too. You know, we get the question all the time about how do you work with the kid that's just so afraid of the ball that every time the ball's thrown to him, he's ducking out of the way, or the batter that's standing in the batter's box and he's so afraid to get hit by the pitch. So us as coaches, we've got to use the Incrediballs. We got to use the smush balls. You just have to get creative at practice. So, you know, it's teaching them how to do it properly, which is, you know, all the technique and how to field a ground ball, how to field a line drive, but then also challenging them with the smush balls, with the Incrediballs. You know, not just throwing them to the fire on day one. They get hit with one line drive, and then you're not going to be able to reel them in the rest of the season. So starting them off with a fun drill like that, before you know it, your kid's going to have a glove on. You're going to hit a real ball at him, and he's going to make the play, and the confidence is there.
Cool. So let's go to Coach Frank. I'm not sure what his question is.
Yeah, I was just reading that. Coach Frank, he coaches U16 in Belgium. Good question, and I believe what you're trying to say is, you know, the pitcher-catcher relationship, when somebody's stealing second base here, what are some tips that you would give your pitchers to kind of control the running game?
Yeah, so I would say, and again, that's funny you guys asked because we worked on it yesterday in velocity class, was holds. All right, so there's so much more to holding the runner than just being able to have a pickoff move or just having a slide step. I'm not a huge fan of slide step, and again, once I got with the Rockies, they explained to me a better way, which was considered a load and go. So a load and go is making sure that your front leg gets all the way over your back leg before you start going forward.
Can you demonstrate for us?
Sure. So a slide step, right? Everybody's taught a slide step is I have to be super fast because I have to make sure that I get to home plate to give my catcher an opportunity to go ahead and throw that guy out. However, when we talk about mechanics of being a pitcher, all of your power is coming from right here. So when you're slide stepping, yes, you might be getting to home plate faster, you might be delivering that pitch a little bit quicker, but you're also sacrificing a lot of the power that you have in your back leg with your normal mechanics. So a load and go, again, I'll do the slide step one more time. A slide step is super quick right there, where a load and go, I'm just getting that knee over my back leg to make sure that I still have all my power from my back leg. So I think explaining what a load and go is and explaining what a slide step is and differentiating those two, but then being able to hold the ball. So that guy over on first base is trying to time us up as pitchers. So when I get on the mound, you'll see so many kids are focused on making sure that they make a good pitch that the runner is the least of their worries, and they think that their catcher is going to take care of it if he starts to steal. In reality, if I come set and I hold it for 2 seconds and throw a pitch, and I get that ball back, and I come up again and hold it for 2 seconds and then throw that ball, eventually that guy over on first base and the first base coach, they're going to start to time me up, and that kid's going to get an insane lead on me, and he's going to take off, giving my catcher 0% chance of throwing him out at second base. So what I like to teach, and again, it was taught to me in the Rockies organization, is changing up your time. So I'm going to come up, maybe my normal set position is 2 seconds. I go and I deliver the pitch. The next time I come up, I'm going to hold it there for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe I take a look over at first base, and then I throw a pitch. Now what that does is that makes that runner's feet over on first base super heavy because he's trying to get a lead on me. He's counting to 2. Maybe he starts to do one of these, and then I'm not going. He starts to shift his weight back to first. Next thing you know, I throw a pitch. He doesn't have an opportunity to steal second base. And those are just 2, right? I can come up, set, boom, quick pitch, making sure that I load and go when I go home. Next one, come up, 4-second hold. Now he's seen this one before. He's getting antsy. Now I can go ahead and show a pickoff move over there. So having 4 or 5 or 6 different times we don't even really need to throw the ball over to first base. We just need to keep the guy over at first base guessing, giving my catcher an opportunity when he does steal to go ahead and throw him out.
Coach Mike, do you want to read Coach Paul's, because it says, can you demonstrate the basic throwing mechanics? So if I'm over there with a glove, would you want to do something like that?
Yeah, just here, throw me the glove, and let me see a ball. All right, so one of the first things when you're working with somebody young, or maybe it's even somebody old, is you got to look at the grip, because you can start diving into mechanics and you can go over a million different things, but if a kid's holding a baseball differently every time, that's definitely going to affect the outcome of the pitch. So teaching the traditional 4-seam grip, the traditional 2-seam grip. First thing that I like to attack when I'm going over throwing motion is the separation of the hands. All right, so sometimes you get a lot of kids where they separate with their glove way out here, or they separate with their glove way down here. That's going to affect the rest of our delivery. So I think teaching a strong glove side right here, and I'll show you from the side, teaching a strong glove side right here is definitely going to affect the arm path. Now you're going to have some guys that have a shorter arm action, and you're going to have some guys that have a longer arm action. Either one, it's okay. I'm not a big fan of getting your arm all the way up before you land. If you watch a lot of videos of big leaguers and some of the best pitchers in the world, their arm is getting up right as their foot is hitting the ground. All right, so having that in the back of your mind, let's start in a few sections and work our way up. So what I would like to do is I like to start right here, kind of both arms flat, and then just working on as my foot is hitting, my arm's coming up. As my foot's hitting, my arm's coming up. And then as he starts to get the hang of that a little bit, you also want to start thinking about his glove side a little bit. So I'm a big believer in what your glove side does, your arm wants to do the opposite. If I'm going to come real high with my glove side, good chance is my arm is going to go real low. Okay, so once you get here and we practiced this, now I'm going to start getting my hands together. I'm going to get a little glove action going, and I'm going to get here. And again, somebody who has a longer arm action, you might not want to start from right here. So you can always start with the ball right by your side. Same thing, my glove's out here. As my foot's landing, my arm's coming up. We run into some guys who have super, super long loopy arm actions, and we have some guys that bring it right to their ear and they try to throw darts. So I think being patient with those guys and going over exactly what we're trying to accomplish and not biting off more than you can chew, right? So we will explain exactly what it's supposed to look like, but little Johnny, who's 10 years old, is probably only going to be able to comprehend about 20% of what I'm telling him. So being able to split it up into sections where maybe you start with the ball on a fence and your arm's already up. Even though we don't want our arm to be up so soon, having him get the feeling of his arm being up in that slot and pulling down on it instead of leading with his elbow and kind of throwing a dart or flicking it forward.
That's good stuff right there. And coaches, I think that's really good advice at, breaking things down into certain segments. I think one thing that I struggled with when I was a first-time coach, when I just finished playing baseball, I got to zoned and I was doing a lot of lessons. I wanted to help so much that I felt like at times I was overdoing it, right? I was trying to fix everything all at once. And one thing I like to say, and I've said it to you guys on the show before, try to put yourself in that player's shoes. If you're talking, if you're a 10-year-old kid, would you understand what that coach is talking about right now? And I think it's important that we as coaches slow it down. What makes a great coach is being able to slow it down, work in baby steps, and also be able to teach the same exact thing in a variety of different ways. So, if you were to watch our infield class here at Zone, we're doing the same exact circuit with 8-year-olds as we are with 18-year-olds. It's going to be a little bit faster paced. The drills are going to be a little bit quicker. We're going to go more in depth, but we're teaching the same exact thing. So I think it's important for you as coaches to be able to teach a variety of different ways. Kids are going to learn by seeing it, they're going to learn by feeling it, or they're going to learn by hearing it. And some kids, you might say 50 times in a row the same thing over and over, and they might just not grasp it. But if you can actually get in the batter's box and maybe show them what their hands are supposed to look like on the load, or get on the pitcher's mound and show them what get your arm up actually means, you could be yelling get your arm up all day, but if that kid doesn't understand what arm up even means, then we're we're wasting time at that point. So I think it's a really good point that Mikey just made at breaking it down into baby steps. Don't attack it all at once. Don't overwhelm that player with so much information. And a lot of times we do it, and we're not even doing it on purpose. And it's something that I got better at the more I coached, just breaking it down, not being in a rush to get things to perfection, but working on one thing a day. And before you know it, it's going to start to take off, and I feel like you can move a lot quicker.
I think being creative too. So something that Steve just said was, you can say the same thing over 50 times and that kid is not going to grasp it. There are so many different ways to explain the exact same thing. What you're trying to explain might technically not even be correct, but if that kid's going to grasp it, now you have a building block that you can build off of. I've been told myself as a pitcher that I needed to separate over the mound early, and separate over the mound as in get the ball out of my glove early. The minute I started thinking that, I became very robotic. And then all of a sudden another coach came over to me and said, hey, let's just think about keeping your head over your back foot and keeping the exact same rhythm that you normally do. And all of a sudden I was now accomplishing getting the ball out of my glove early because I was staying back the way that I needed to. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach what you're trying to explain. And know your crowd. If they're younger, you're going to have to talk slower, and you're going to have to explain and demonstrate everything that you're doing. If you're a little bit older, 16, 17 years old, those kids are going to have a pretty good grasp on what you're trying to do, and they might have a couple questions here and there, but just know your crowd and who you're talking to.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Coach Sonny, thanks so much for the kind words about our program. It looks like you've been coaching for a long time. And the question that you asked us was, utilizing the footwork. Is the footwork the foundation to most skill sets? And I would say yes. I mean, when you hear hitting coaches talking about hitting, they build you from the ground up. How are your feet? Using the force from the ground, with your swing. When you watch our infield classes, you'll see us do some glove work, but then we're immediately going into cones. We're going into ladders. We're going into agility drills. We're working on the feet and posture and making sure that they're in a good position for fielding. And I'm sure with pitching, Coach Mikey is the foundation. Are the legs really important in pitching as well?
Yeah, I mean, you get all your power from your legs. It's bottom line. Not to mention your balance over the rubber, making sure that we're driving down the mound, our direction is good, and then also being able to have a solid foundation so that we can get over our front leg when we throw. Talking, a little bit more mechanics for some of the older kids, but absolutely, I think that if you don't have a solid foundation from your waist down, I think it makes pitching a lot more difficult because your body now loses control going down the mound. And a kid might have an amazing arm action, but if it doesn't connect with his lower body, he's going to now have a ceiling on how hard he can throw the baseball or how good his stuff can be. I think once those legs really start getting incorporated, I think that's when the kid starts turning from a thrower into a pitcher.
Yes, Sonny, that's a good question. It's funny, I had a lesson last night, and this player, we've been working so much on his mechanics over the last couple months, and he's really making good strides, and his dad came in to watch, and at the end of the lesson, he's like, so what does he got to work on? And I said, just his load. He's just got to get himself to the best launch position possible as a hitter. And he's going to put himself in good shape, because if he's stepping across his body on one swing and then crashing on his front foot and then landing open, that's really where his mechanics start to break down. And his dad was like, what do you mean just his feet? I was like, just his feet. If he can control his load and get to a good launch position, everything else is working right now. And it's something that gets overlooked sometimes. You're so worried about the barrel and what his head's looking like, but if you can get to that proper launch position on every single pitch, the same thing with infield footwork, the same thing with pitcher's footwork, I think you're going to put yourself in a good position to be successful. But really good question there. We appreciate it.
Let's go to Coach Sean's question. This was a big topic that we wanted to make sure we talked about today. At what age do you recommend beginning to incorporate breaking pitches into a pitcher's arsenal?
Yeah, I think that's a super common question that we get asked a lot from parents that come in. I would say as far as ages 9 to 10, 9 to 11, those are usually the ages that you want to start talking about a changeup. right? A changeup is usually needed at those ages. A lot of times you see a lot of kids just throwing fastballs, sometimes four seams, sometimes two seams, sometimes both. Once we get to ages 13, I would say a curveball or a slider, but probably a curveball is the best route to go. And the reason I say that is because we were just talking about mechanics, and we were talking about our lower body and making sure that everything is mechanically sound. I think aside from not being fully developed, or even age 13, you're still not fully developed, but definitely ages 9 to 11, 9 to 12, you're not fully developed. Aside from that, I think if we don't have a solid foundation of mechanics, I think we run the risk of hurting ourselves even more with that curveball. And I think that from ages 9 to 12, that's a perfect window for you to really lock in your mechanics, understand your body, understand your throwing motion, and then by the time you become 13 years old, being able to throw that curveball into the mix. But I think any earlier than that, you're kind of flirting with fire a little bit there, due to the fact that you're trying to understand your mechanics, you're trying to understand the correct way to be a pitcher, and now you're also trying to understand how to throw a curveball at that age. I think it's a lot to comprehend all at once at that age.
And honestly, from a hitter's perspective, I think a changeup's really, really difficult to hit. I think kids fall in love with the idea of a curveball because you're getting it to move. They fall in love with the idea of swings and misses. But coming from a hitter's perspective, a good quality changeup is really challenging because it looks the exact same way coming in as a fastball. If Mikey was pitching to me, he might throw me a two-seamer in, followed with a two-seam changeup, and then a four-seam fastball and a four-seam changeup. That's really challenging for me to pick up because the spin's the exact same, right? So kids, they fall in love with the idea of a curveball and trying to get that batter to buckle his knees and fall out of the way. But if you can teach them a good quality changeup at a young age, I think you're really setting them up for success long term.
Yeah, and everybody seems to shy away from the changeup, like you said, because it doesn't have that crazy movement, especially at a young age, right? You're looking for more speed difference than you really are movement at that age. Something that I like to teach as far as changeups go I always ask the kid, what pitch are you most confident with? If I said it's a 3-2 count in the bottom of the ninth of the World Series, what pitch can you throw? They're going to usually say either four-seam fastball or two-seam fastball. I go from there. If they say four-seam fastball, we learn a four-seam fastball or a four-seam changeup. If they say two-seam, we learn a two-seam changeup. And it's super simple. If a kid is starting off with a changeup, a lot of times his hands are very, very small, right? So for them to kind of grab that whole baseball with their hand doesn't feel too uncomfortable. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, show me your four-seam grip. A lot of times I like to teach the backward C for a righty, all right? Just because of the fact that your middle finger is longer than your pointer finger. So each finger will be on. This is a four-seam fastball. Now if we're throwing a changeup, I'm going to go ahead and put my middle finger and my ring finger. I'm going to keep my other two fingers on the outside, and I'm going to keep my thumb right in the middle of the baseball underneath, right? So a lot of coaches like to teach the circle changeup. This is very close to being a circle changeup right there, okay? When you tell a kid that you want him to make a circle with his actual hand, it becomes so much more difficult to have feel for that pitch. So a kid tells me two seams my number one pitch. That's what I'm going to in Game 7 of the World Series in the bottom of the ninth. Okay, now we have our two-seam grip. I'm going to take my two middle fingers. I'm going to put them right on the two-seam laces. The other two fingers on the outside of the ball, thumb right down the middle. My biggest thing that I try to express when I'm talking about a changeup is to keep our same energy or our same throwing motion when we throw this pitch. So a lot of kids, and I'm sure coaches, you guys can agree, they're getting ready to throw, and then they start to slow it down because they want that pitch to be slower because it's a changeup. This is when you're going to see a lot of command issues, and this is why kids shy away from throwing a changeup because it makes throwing that pitch accurately so much more difficult. A drill that you can do to get a kid into throwing a changeup is long toss with a changeup grip, right? So when they're a lot further away, they don't have a choice but to actually put a lot of energy into that throw. And then as they do that, they start to get more comfortable with actually releasing the baseball with all of their fingers on, and you slowly work your way back in. We were talking about practice before and how to throw or how to get pitchers incorporated more. It's perfectly okay if your kids are warming up down the line and they're out to 100 feet or 120 feet to throw some changeup grips in there. Once they start coming back in, that's usually when we like to do our pull down, so more intensity throws. Same thing, change up grip, let it go, feel the ball come out of your hand, and you're going to see some kids start to buy in a little bit more when it comes to the change up.
That's good stuff right there. Coach Jim has a really good question here too. At what age would you start having catchers give the pitcher signs? And that's a good one, because Duke and I have talked about this in the past, that teaching the pitcher-catcher relationship, teaching the catchers to understand what different counts mean, what to do in certain situations, and really letting them learn from failure. Coach Mike and I, we coached together last summer with our 15U team, and he had signs with our catchers, and he would use them in a tight spot where we really needed him to call a pitch. He wasn't calling pitches on every single pitch. And what I mean by learn from failure is, the catcher might make a mistake, and you talk to him in between innings and you say, hey, bud, what were you thinking in that situation right there? And you kind of get in their head and you use it as a teaching moment. So, 0-2 count, let's say he threw a fastball right down the middle and the kid hit a home run. So that kid might come in the dugout and you might be yelling at him, why'd you call that pitch? When in reality, he might have called a changeup, or he might have called a fastball 6 inches off the plate and the pitcher just missed his spot. So, that catcher might have a good reason behind calling a certain pitch. Maybe the pitcher shook him off, maybe the pitcher missed his spot. But, I think at a young age, and I'll let Mike touch on this too, teaching the catchers to understand, man, that batter was late 2 fastballs in a row. So let's not speed up his bat here and hang a changeup right down the middle. Or, that kid's chasing balls all over the place. We can work outside the zone, whatever it might be. But teaching those catchers at a young age to understand what certain counts are, what are the batter's tendencies and what pitches should we throw in certain spots.
Yeah, I think, this past year, I was with 10U, and I attempted to go ahead and put some signs down, but the biggest thing that I ran into was the catcher was so locked into what was going on in the game that he wouldn't look over to the dugout. So I was trying to put signs on, but he was trying to pay attention to the pitcher, which I can't fault him on. He's 10 years old, and I'm happy that he was locked into the game. As they're getting a little bit older and we're working with them more, I think 10U is a pretty good age to start telling the catchers to put some signs down. Obviously, coaches, you guys should be calling the signs, but just going over something super, super simple as far as, if I touch my hat, I want you to go 4-seam. If I touch my nose, I want you to go 2-seam. If I touch my chin, I want you to go change up. And again, you don't have to be too technical with what part of the plate you're actually trying to go on, because I think when you're trying to introduce signs and now it's, okay, I want you to go 4-seam on the inside corner, a 10U kid standing behind home plate is going to say, did he touch his right ear or did he touch his left ear? Does he mean my right ear or does he mean his right ear? And then I think that you start to get into a little bit of chaos with that. But I think setting up that catcher middle, and then being able to, universal signs, we like to go 4-seam fastball, 2-seam with a wiggle, and then change up all 4 fingers. So we had a couple pitchers that got some signs last year during the fall, and it actually worked out pretty well. So I think being able to incorporate that into your practice, right? We can't tell the kids, hey, these are the signs, come game time, we need you to do them. Yeah. We need to sit down with them on the side, and we need to say, okay, give us a sign, pitchers come set, and then go down the line and ask the pitchers, what sign did they give you? What are we throwing right here? And making sure that everybody's on the same page. And also just slowing it down a little bit, right? If you're coaching 10U baseball or 11U baseball, it's not going to be super fast games. They're going to be slower games. You're on the small field, you're on the 50-70 field. So I think just really kind of backing yourself off a little bit, making sure that the catcher doesn't get too flustered. Tell them, okay, give them a little bit of a breather. Hey, we're going to go 4-seam fastball. Tap it a couple times, let them know, and then I think that it'll go well.
I wanted to remind everybody that Mikey had put together an awesome pitching course. We'll add that in the comments. You can click that link. Almost everything that he's talking about is in the course. There's templates in there. It's how to pregame, how to get yourself ready to actually throw, to actually warm up. What should you do post game? He's got different workout programs in there, different arm strengthening programs. So there's a lot of arm health in there, as well as just everything you need to know to help your players become really good throwers and become pitchers. So you can check out that link, and if you get our membership, you get all of it for free. You get over 800 videos, all of our templates, all of our programs, you know, everything that we have. So You can get that for 7 days for free. Check that out. So just wanted to make sure that everybody knew how to get that information as we keep on going. So what's the next one that we got up here? What's another good one that we have? I know a good one, Mike. We got asked this question last week, and a lot of kids are, we get this. My son's 10 years old. He's the hardest thrower on the team, but all of a sudden he gets into the game and he drops from throwing 60 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour. He's afraid to hit the batter, and he turns into a totally different pitcher, and he throws the ball all over the place, and he's almost like afraid to throw. So do you have any advice for those coaches, parents out there that have that kid that throws really hard, and he looks dynamite in the bullpen, but as soon as he steps between the white lines on the field, he looks like a totally different pitcher?
Yeah, I think you have to incorporate hitters into their bullpens. So you can get a red guy made out of plastic and shove him in there. You can even have some of your other players that play a position get in there with a helmet, right? That way it's beneficial for both the pitcher and the hitter, because the hitter is seeing pitches coming from the pitcher, and the pitcher is also getting a chance to throw to some hitters. I have done drills with kids before that really struggle as far as backing off when it comes to throwing into a game. And something that I like to do is I like to sit down in the catcher's stance with my catcher's glove. I'll back the kid up maybe 10 feet past where he actually throws the ball from, and I'll tell him I want 10 max effort crow hop throws right at me. I don't care where they go. I don't care if they're strikes or balls. I just want you to let them go right at me and feel yourself exploding. That kid's going to realize that when his body is moving correctly and he's throwing the ball, I'll say max effort or close to max effort, the ball is relatively all around where he or she is trying to throw the baseball. I think that when we get on the mound or even flat ground and we try to back off a little bit to throw more strikes, you're now changing your delivery, right? So that delivery that you practice so hard at, it might be arm action, it might be our lower half like we talked about, it might be our direction down the mound. All of that stuff gets shifted just a little bit when you lower your intensity and you try to throw darts. And I think trying to repeat one delivery and learn one delivery is hard enough, especially at a young age. I think when you start to slow your arm action down, it's even harder, because now you have two different deliveries that you're trying to repeat on any given pitch. So I think trying to explain to the kid and making that kid realize that when we throw a baseball, we want to throw it with one effort level. Now, whether that be 100% every single throw, maybe that's 90%, maybe that's 80%, whatever feels comfortable to that kid. But having those crow hop throws in and letting him let it go, just to show him, hey, it is possible to still throw strikes at max effort, or it is still possible to throw strikes at 90 or 80% effort, and not worry so much about where that ball is actually going.
That's good right there. Coach Mike, just to answer your question, we talked about that earlier on. So if you just scroll back, you'll be able to see. I know Mike talked about it a lot earlier as to when he started pitching, what the right age to start pitching is. Coach pitch now for 7 and 8 year olds. Next year the 8 year olds will be on kid pitch, and that's a tough jump. We talked about it last week, going from coach pitch to kid pitch, kid pitch to 50-70 where the runners are stealing now for the first time, and then that transition to the big field. But if you just scroll back a little bit, Mikey covered that earlier in the show, so we definitely have that answered for you. And Joey Bass says, make this the last question, please. What do you got, a date, man? You're always on here. We've got, what do we got, another hour and a half of the show, Duke? Or are we going to sign off because Joey Bass wants to sign off?
He doesn't want to miss anything. Cool. So, well, I guess that was our last question. It's, what you got? You got the card going? Bullpen card. You're gonna pop up the bullpen card? Coach Mike, you want me to talk about the card? You want to talk about the card a little bit?
I'll take it. Yeah, so we have, this is just a little bit of a pregame routine chart that you can go by if you have no idea what to do before a game or after a game. So at the top left, you see 2 poles. We have sprints, 90 feet, dynamic stretch. I think dynamic stretch really put an emphasis on that. I found that a lot of kids, when they know that they're pitching that game, they kind of go through the motions because they're so fired up to get into the game. So making sure that the team stretches as a team, especially at a young age. You don't need your pitcher stretching by himself off to the side. Keep everything going with the team. Band work, now this is talking a little bit about older guys, making sure that you can go through your arm exercises with your bands, the arm circles forward, the reverse up and downs, the side to sides, just making sure that we're touching all of our muscles in our arms. And then our throwing routine. So this is going to change from day to day. So right here you have 45 feet, 4-seam fastball, opposite arm or glove side, 2-seam fastball arm side. You can also go 2-seam fastball glove side, change up arm side, breaking ball opposite as arm side, which would be glove side. So there's just a good routine that you can stick to as you're coming in from your throwing program, making sure, I'm a huge advocate on making sure that we get all of our pitches in while we're throwing. So if you're going to go play catch down the right field line and you're pitching that day, we should be able to mix in a changeup during throwing program. We should be able to mix in 2 seams and 4 seams. When we get closer, we should throw some breaking balls because it's not going to just magically appear when we get into the bullpen. And then that's a sketch on there for the bullpen, but I'll just speak off of my head. I'm a huge advocate on making sure that we find the strike zone with our 4-seam fastball first. So if you throw one 4-seam fastball and you miss the strike zone, there is no reason why we should be throwing a 2-seam or a changeup or a curveball yet. Now, it's a different story. Maybe we miss 5 or 6 times in a row, and we're going to see if there's another pitch that's working for us that day. But I think being able to command the strike zone and find that strike zone and being able to repeat it over and over and over again is going to make repeating our 2-seam and our changeup and our curveball way easier. So something that we like to do is we'll go 4 seams, then we'll go 4 2-seams. Then we'll start to introduce the changeup a little bit. You can work arm side, you can work glove side. Arm side for a righty obviously is inside to a righty. Glove side for a righty is outside to a righty. So I think being able to mix all your pitches in, and then what I like to do, let's say for a kid that's coming in right now into Zone Sports Academy, is the season's right around the corner, so I like to work in some simulated hitters. So maybe the first hitter I'll call and I'll put down the pitches and make sure that he's hitting his spots. And then the second batter, I'll look at him and say, okay, I want to pick your brain. I want to see how you would pitch this hitter. We're going to say that there's a righty and he's the number 3 hitter and he had a base hit up the middle off of you last at bat. What are you going to do? And being able to pick his brain, and I think you touched on it before with the catchers, is, okay, why did we throw that pitch? What makes you think that that was a good pitch to start him off with? Or what were you trying to accomplish here? I think there's so much more to being a pitcher than just having good mechanics and being able to throw strikes. I think the actual thinking aspect of it is what's going to take that pitcher to the next level, because you don't want to just be a yes guy to whatever your catcher's calling. If you're not comfortable throwing that pitch, or you don't believe that that's the right pitch to throw, well, then we shouldn't throw it, because if a mistake is made, that's the pitcher's fault. It's not the catcher's fault.
You guys probably experience it a ton. I know we do at the younger ages. Kid will go down to the bullpen, throw 3 pitches, and say, all right, I'm ready. And he's not ready at all. He just goes down there, he does a couple arm circles, throws a couple pitches. They're all over the place, balls flying on the field, mid-pitch, and he's ready to go. But in reality, he's not. And then he comes in the game, he walks the first 2 batters. He's like, I'm still getting loose. Well, there is no still getting loose. We got to make sure that when we get on the mound for the first pitch, we're ready to go. And, Mikey touching on being able to locate all of our pitches in the bullpen before the game is huge. And, we see it with batters a lot too. I have my guys stand in there sometimes down in the bullpen, and they're just working on seeing pitches and working on their timing. I think it's all added value just to make sure that those guys are ready to roll when the first pitch gets called.
Yeah, I want to touch up on one small thing that when Coach Mike asked about the 7 and 8-year-olds being first-time pitching, we worked with a guy named Coach Brian from Missouri in our Done With You program. So we worked privately with him last year, and one of his challenges was he needed more pitchers. So he also didn't know how long he should keep some of those new guys in for. So he's like, I had a guy throw an inning, but it was like 9 guys by the time he walked a few guys and this and that. He's like, I didn't want to take him out because I felt bad. And so what we said, a solution to that is, maybe if a kid has never pitched before and he wants to try it, you say, hey, we're really excited you're going to get a chance to throw to 4 batters today. And that way you set it up as, hey, you're almost setting him up to to be successful, right? If he does walk 2 guys and 1 guy gets a hit, and say he walks another guy, well, he knows he's coming out already. So it's not he's out there for 11 straight walks and what do I do now? Now he's demoralized. He's thrown a million pitches, and it's like, so, or you could say 2 pitches. You could throw 2 batters, 2 batters, 3 batters. Just set them up for success, and whatever happens, happens. But that way, when you take him out in the middle of the inning, it's not, well, how come Johnny got taken out? Well, he already knew before he even went in that he was only throwing for 3 batters. So a lot of you are going to be experiencing that as 7, 8, and 9-year-olds that have never pitched before, have never gone on the field. They're going to get nervous. They're going to, all those things are going to happen. People are going to be yelling and screaming, and mom and dad, and, they might hit a guy and fall apart. So just kind of set them up as, let them know what the expectation is, and sometimes that makes it so much easier when you do go make a mound visit or take them out. It's kind of like, okay, gosh, thank gosh you came out and got me. Here's the ball. I got my 3 batters, and I'm glad I gave it a try. So I just wanted to say that because a lot of coaches out there are wondering, what is it okay to take him out in the middle of the inning, and what if he walks 4 guys? So, saying you have 3 or 4 batters often is a really good way to do that. So
yeah, I think on top of that too, when you do have that really good pitcher that's advanced for 8 or 9, not leaving him out there to dry. So yes, he's the one guy on the team that can throw strikes for you, and he's the one guy that throws the ball really hard, but he's also 8 years old, right? So don't go throwing him 7 innings or 6 innings out there where he's throwing 25 pitches an inning, because he might be the great pitcher now, but if you're throwing him that much, he's not even going to be a pitcher by the time he's 11 years old. So I think giving kids a chance, especially at 8U, whether it goes good or it doesn't go good, that's how they're going to learn so that they can develop into a pitcher by the time they're 11 or 12 years old.
That's good stuff. We got 2 questions. I'll start with Gabe's here. Dom, I'm going to hop to the middle camera here and demonstrate something real quick. So let me use 5 baseballs here. Gabe, really good question there. I'm going to use a makeshift home plate here. This is going to be my home plate. All right. Points of contact in hitting, and you're talking about batters getting beat inside and not really getting the barrel out on time. So one thing I really like to do is I like to put 5 baseballs down in front of home plate. First I'll talk about where we want to make contact. So let's say your batter's in the batter's box. Doesn't matter where he stands. Once that player gets loaded and their front foot hits the ground, I like to put a ball right down the middle, right about where their front foot hits. This is going to be our point of contact right down the middle. Now I draw a straight line across where my front knee hits. This is going to be my outside corner. And then I'm going to fill in the dots right here. So I've got basically 5 baseballs that are making up home plate. And that's how I teach players points of contact. So again, outside corner is going to be pretty much where my front knee lands. Middle is going to be just off my front foot, and then I kind of fill in that line and work across. So for you coaches out there, you can see the closer the ball is to me, the further out in front I want to make contact. And what I'll do is I'll set balls up like this for the players, and I'll flip, and as they're swinging, let's say it's the one furthest away, they take their full swing, and they say 5, because I have the balls numbered, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then I'll move it around a little bit. I'll throw one at 2. They have to make contact out here. They have to say 2 afterwards. 2 reasons. 1, it shows them where they have to make contact. And 2, it gives them an understanding of what the strike zone is. Because I think part of your question here is guys for pitch number 1, way inside, they're trying to make contact back in here and they're getting jammed. They're either getting it back in here, they're trying to inside out or to push it to right field, and they don't trust that they can get the barrel out in front of home plate and really drive it here. So I think it's 2 things. It's 1, teaching them what the strike zone is, right? What's an outside pitch, what's middle, what's in, middle away, showing them where we want to make contact with those pitches, and then just flipping balls to them and having them call out, all right, that was pitch number 3, that was 4, and see if they're driving it to the right parts of the field. Because with pitches 1 and 2 here, I want to make sure I'm pulling that to the left center field gap, right? 2, 3, 4, kind of in that area, I want to try to shoot middle of the field, and then 4 and 5, I want to shoot the other way. For your older guys, let's say they get to high school, you can line up 7 balls right across home plate. Because if I had a real home plate here, I could show you 7 baseballs makes up home plate. And that's just a little bit more challenging way of them calling out 1 through 7 after every single pitch. But I think it gives them a good understanding of where that pitch is crossing home plate and where their barrel should be at contact. I also love doing video. I'll set the video up right on the side, and I'll set it up in slow motion. This way when they're swinging, you can see, oh man, I got jammed. I made contact all the way back in here. I didn't get the head out. And I say head, the head of the barrel. I didn't get the barrel out in front of home plate to really drive it. But Coach Gabe, that's a really good question there. I think we go through that a lot. And timing is so much of hitting. 99% of the stuff that I'm talking about right now with the season right around the corner is timing. It's our approach. It's making sure we're on time, we're aggressive. We're about a week and a half from high school tryouts here in New Jersey. The spring season for our little guys is starting up in a couple weeks, so we're starting to go live. We're starting to, use the pitching machine a lot, see balls with more velocity on them. We're mixing in breaking balls, really just getting these guys ready for opening day. And, I think that's a great question right there. I think a lot of us struggle with that as coaches, but hopefully that helps.
Good.
We got to finish with Joey Bass. I saw his comment earlier. We didn't get to it in time. So Mikey hasn't been on our shows, but Joey always gives me comments on my hair, so he's busting your chops saying that I got the good genes in the family. We both got hats on today. Mikey's got some good hair too.
Yeah, good hair if you close one eye and cover up the other.
Appreciate the love, Joey, as always.
So always remember that we're going to keep on going through Facebook. We're going to keep going through our YouTube and our Instagram, and keep the comments coming, and also the questions. Any questions that you have, we'll make sure that we make videos. We'll tee them up for next week. We have some really good topics for next week as well. We're going to be on the same exact time, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you're watching. We're excited. Thanks so much. Mikey, thanks so much for being on the show. Duke Baxter, Steve Nikorak, Mikey Nikorak at Zone Sports Academy from Dominate the Diamond. Thanks so much, and dominate the day.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.